Mom, starting next month, will transfer all your money to my account. That's what my son said, his tone calm, professional, like I was just another client he needed to manage. I smiled. I didn't argue. That same night, he and his wife came over for their usual free dinner, laughing like nothing was wrong. But when they stepped inside my house, both of them screamed. Every piece of furniture was gone. The TV, the couch, even the dining table they loved to sit at empty. Only one chair remained. Mine. That's the moment my silence stopped being weakness and became my weapon. Before I share my story, I'd love to know you're here with me. Drop a simple hi in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far my story can reach. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. If my story touches you in any way, please consider subscribing to this channel. It means more than you know. My name is Isolde Marin, and this is how I learned that sometimes a mother's smile can be the loudest form of revenge. Mom, starting next month, will transfer all your money to my account. Cassian said it with that polished tone he used in office meetings, a tone that turned my kitchen into a boardroom and me into an aging client. I didn't argue. I just smiled, stirring my coffee like his words meant nothing. Maybe he took that silence as weakness. Maybe that's what I wanted him to think. Outside, the sky over Port Townsend hung low gray with early rain. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and damp wood. It was the same house I'd lived in for 40 years, every corner filled with memories I'd bought one grocery shift at a time. Cassian leaned back in his chair, sipping coffee from the mug I'd bought him in college. "It's for your own safety, Mom," he said. "You won't have to worry about anything anymore." He smiled like a banker offering a deal like a man too certain of his own logic. I nodded. "You're right, dear. Maybe it's time to simplify." That night, while the rain drummed against the roof, I sat in the same chair and stared at the furniture around me. The couch Cassian used to nap on the TV, where we watched old movies, the dining table that still held faint coffee stains from when he studied for finals. Everything in that room was proof of my life and his comfort. I turned off the lights and opened my laptop. By midnight, every piece was listed for sale. TV, sofa, bookshelf, even the curtains. Only one thing stayed: the solid oak table my late husband had built, scratched and worn, but mine. Friday came, and with it the familiar sound of Cassian's car pulling into the driveway. Every Friday, same routine, he and Rowena would show up expecting dinner, like customers returning to their favorite restaurant. The key I'd given him turned the lock. The door creaked, and then came the scream. Mom. "What the hell, where's the TV?" His voice echoed off bare walls. Rowena's heels clicked fast behind him, her manicured fingers clutching her phone like she'd stepped into a crime scene. They stared at the empty room, the stripped walls, the lone table and single chair. I kept folding napkins, calm. "I sold a few things," I said. "If you're going to manage my money, I figured I'd start living the way you think I should, minimal, practical." Cassian's face drained, then flushed red. "You can't just sell everything without asking me. Where are we supposed to sit? How are we supposed to be comfortable here?" The word hung in the air. We. Not you. Not Mom. We. I looked at him. Really looked, and saw not my son, but a man who believed comfort was his birthright, a man who saw my home as his extension. Rowena crossed her arms. "That was selfish, Patricia," she said coldly. "We come here to keep you company. This is how you repay us, selfish." That word hit me harder than any insult. I thought of the years I'd worked double shifts so Cassian could have brand-name shoes, the nights I skipped dinner so he could eat full plates, the house I kept running even after his father left. Selfish. I smiled again this time, slower, sharper. "Dinner's not ready tonight. If you're hungry, there's a diner down the road." Rowena scoffed. Cassian took a step closer. "You're being reckless. People your age shouldn't make sudden decisions like this. It's dangerous living alone." "Then it's a good thing I'm still alive to make them," I said quietly. When they finally stormed out, I sat in the empty room, listening to the echo fade. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. That night, I wrote one sentence in my notebook. Next week, I start auditing my life. I didn't always live like this, measured, cautious, questioning every word from my son. There was a time when Cassian's name meant purpose. I raised him alone after his father left when he was 2. That day, I sold my engagement ring for rent money. By day, I was a secretary at a shipping company. At night, I cleaned offices, pushing a vacuum down empty hallways while thinking about his future. I remember the smell of ammonia, the hum of the lights, and the ache in my wrists that felt worth it because he'd have more than I did. When Cassian turned 10, he asked for sneakers that cost almost a week's groceries. I bought them anyway. I ate beans and rice for a month, proud when he ran out of the store, grinning. That was the first trade I made comfort for his joy. Later, it became routine. At 18, he wanted a private college in Seattle. Tuition was $15,000 a year. I had no savings, only a stubborn heart and a decent credit score. I signed a loan I'd pay for 10 years. Every payment I sent felt like proof of love, a promise that he'd never feel small in a world that measures worth in money. He graduated top of his class, got a corporate job, earned more than I ever did, and still, he stayed. He said he wanted to save for the future, and I said yes. My house became his free base camp. I paid rent, groceries, electricity. He paid nothing and saved everything. I remember one winter when the heating bill doubled and I pawned a gold bracelet to cover it. Cassian didn't notice. He was busy calculating mortgage rates for the house he planned to buy one day. That one day came 5 years later when he bought a $240,000 home in cash. I baked him a pie and told him I was proud. When he married Rowena, I thought maybe I'd finally rest. The wedding was grand string quartet. Champagne, 200 guests. I sat at a small table near the kitchen because, as Cassian explained, the main tables are for clients and partners. I smiled for photos, clapped during toasts, and went home alone, clutching the thank you card they'd left at my seat instead of a gift. That night, I washed off my makeup and stared at my reflection, wondering when pride had started to feel like loneliness. After the wedding, they stopped visiting often. Once a week became once a month. Then Friday dinners returned, not as visits but rituals of convenience. They'd arrive unannounced, eat fast, check their phones, and leave. No, how are you, Mom? No, do you need help with anything? Just full plates and an empty chair across from me. I timed it once 70 minutes from arrival to departure. On my 60th birthday, Cassian arrived 2 hours late. No card, no gift. He said traffic was bad. He ate the cake I bought for myself, hugged me with one arm, and left 20 minutes later. I watched his car taillights disappear down the street and realized something that stung more than any insult. I had raised a man who didn't see me as a person, only as a provider that never stopped giving. That was the night I stopped defending him in my own head. The night I understood that what I called love had turned into a quiet form of servitude. He once said at dinner, "Mom, you shouldn't stress about money. That's poor planning." Poor planning. The same mouth that had eaten my sacrifices now lectured me on efficiency. Rowena laughed softly beside him, the way people do when they agree but don't want to look cruel. Still, every Friday I cooked. I told myself it was for love, but deep down, I knew it was habit, a ritual to fill the silence between us. But silence, I was learning, could be powerful too. So when he stood in my kitchen that Thursday afternoon and told me he'd take over my finances, I didn't see control. I saw confirmation. Everything I had feared about him had finally surfaced, and I smiled because I already knew what Friday would bring. The house was empty, and so was the illusion. What remained was me and the quiet, steady sound of a woman reclaiming herself. I woke up before dawn, the sound of rain hitting the roof steady as a metronome. My kitchen smelled like burnt toast and black coffee, the kind of morning that made thinking clearer. On the table were papers, receipts, envelopes with Cassian's handwriting, all spread out like a battlefield map. I looked at the authorization form he'd given me to sign. The signature line had my name in handwriting that looked just close enough to fool a stranger, but not close enough to fool me. The P in Patricia curved wrong. My pen always dipped, left not right. I ran my finger over the paper, the ink slightly smudged, too fresh to be from me. At Pacific Sound Credit Union, the clerk smiled politely as she typed my account number. "Would you like to review recent transactions, Mrs. Marin?" she asked. I nodded, my palms damp. The printer began to hum, spitting out a long trail of paper like a confession. Then I saw it withdrawal of $1,200 in Seattle. That day, I was at my doctor's appointment in Port Townsend. I could still recall the smell of disinfectant, the nurse with silver hair. There was no way that withdrawal was mine. I folded the paper, slipped it into my purse, and said softly, "Could I have a printed copy? Please?" At home, I laid the statement beside another envelope, Cassian's monthly management proposal. His tone echoed in my head, professional and cold. I opened my laptop and logged into my online banking. That's when I saw it, a credit card with my name open 3 months ago. Balance $4,512. Purchases included a flat-screen TV, leather sectional, and outdoor grill, all things I'd noticed in Cassian's new backyard the last time I visited. My hand trembled as I scrolled. I wanted to scream, but instead I wrote everything down in my old spiral notebook. Date, time, transaction ID. Facts don't shake when voices do. Next I called Piedmont Electric. A young man answered, too cheerful for what I needed. "Can you confirm whose name is on the electric and internet accounts for 428 Maple Drive, Seattle?" I asked. "One moment, ma'am," he said. A pause, the clicking of a keyboard. Then, "It's under a Patricia Marin. That's you, right?" I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said quietly. "And how long has it been that way?" 2 years, he replied. "There are a few late fees. You might want to update your mailing address." Late fees. My credit score sinking because my son couldn't be bothered to pay bills that weren't his. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at the quiet room around me. My kitchen felt smaller that night. The refrigerator hummed softly like it was keeping my secret. I went to my desk, opened a new folder, and labeled it, "The Quiet Audit." Week 1. Inside, I placed each printed statement, every screenshot, every note. I even printed the Piedmont Electric email confirming my name. I arranged them by date like bones forming a spine. Each evening I wrote notes, what I found, what I suspected, what I remembered. The night Cassian once stopped by unannounced when I was in the shower. My wallet had been on the counter open. I remembered how the bathroom door creaked, how he said he came to borrow a screwdriver. Maybe he did. Or maybe he borrowed something else. Bernice, my next-door neighbor, waved when she saw me hanging laundry. She was in her 70s, sharp as glass. I told her lightly that I might need her to witness something soon. Nothing serious. She nodded, the kind of nod that meant she'd seen enough in life not to ask too many questions. Before bed, I logged on to the Atlantic Credit Bureau website and requested a full credit report. Appointment scheduled for next week. My hand still trembled as I typed, but not from fear anymore, from purpose. My phone buzzed around midnight. Cassian's message appeared on the screen. "Mom, did you sign the papers yet? Don't delay things you don't understand." I read it twice, the condescension sharp as vinegar. Then I glanced at the thick folder beside me and smiled. I whispered to the quiet room, "Not yet, sweetheart, not yet." The air had turned colder by late October, the kind of chill that made the windows sweat and the old pipes groan. That Friday, I roasted chicken like always, even set out Cassian's favorite red wine. I wanted everything to feel normal. That was part of the test. When they arrived, Rowena's perfume hit me before her voice did. "Smells wonderful, Patricia." She said, her smile stretched thin. Cassian took his usual seat, scrolled through his phone, barely looking up. We ate quietly for a few minutes. Then Rowena said it casually, as if she were commenting on the weather. "It must be hard managing bills at your age. I can't even remember passwords sometimes." She laughed softly. Cassian looked up from his phone, pretending to agree. "Yeah, Mom, we were talking about that. Remember when you asked me to withdraw money last week and forgot I set down my fork? I never asked you to withdraw anything, I said calmly. Cassian leaned forward, smile, still polite, but eyes hard. You might have forgotten. It's fine. That's why we're helping. I wanted to laugh at the word helping. Instead, I took a sip of wine and said, I remember exactly what I do, Cassian. Down to the last receipt. Rowena reached over and touched his hand. It's natural, Patricia. Everyone gets confused sometimes. We just worry about you, that's all. Her tone was syrupy sweet, but every word stuck like glass. Dinner dragged on. The clink of forks against plates was the only sound. When I stood to clear the dishes, Cassian said softly, Mom, maybe we should have someone help you with finances officially. It would just take the pressure off. I looked at him, at the man I once carried through storms and sickness, now sitting in my kitchen like an advisor hired to audit my worth. And who do you think that someone should be? I asked. Well, he said, glancing at Rowena, me, obviously. I nodded, gathered the plates, and took them to the sink. I could feel the heat of anger rising in my chest, but I forced my voice steady. You're right, I said. Maybe it's time someone else handled things. But for now, eat your dinner before it gets cold. After they left, I heard their voices through the cracked front door. Rowena's whisper was sharp. If she keeps resisting, we'll need to handle this legally. I looked into Evergreen Care Home. They take full guardianship cases. My fingers tightened around the doorknob. Guardianship. They wanted to put me away. I didn't move, didn't breathe. When the sound of their car faded, I went back inside and locked every door. The kitchen light flickered, then steadied. I sat down at the table, opened my laptop, and created a new folder. Proof case number 1. Inside it, I scanned every page from my quiet audit. I added Cassian's texts, photos of mail with my name tied to his address, and a voice memo I just recorded of their conversation outside. My hands stopped shaking. I realized something fear was useful only if you learned to file it properly. Around midnight, I searched Elder Financial Exploitation Law, Washington State. The articles were cold and technical, but each sentence made me feel less alone. There were names, phone numbers, even a lawyer listed in Port Townsend Elliott Morehouse. I wrote it down. I wasn't ready to call yet, but knowing the name felt like holding a weapon. When I finally shut off the lights, the house seemed to breathe with me. The refrigerator hummed. The floor creaked. I whispered to the darkness, "You're not crazy. You're careful." At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. "Mom, you left the oven on. Please don't risk your life. Let me handle things." I turned my head toward the stove. Its light, a soft amber glow. It was off, completely off. I smiled to myself, the kind of smile that feels like armor. "If it's a war you want, Cassian," I murmured, opening my notebook, "then this time the mother you underestimated will write every battle down." And so I began my pen, moving steady across the page. The first words of my next file, Gaslight Season. Week 2. It took me 3 days to gather the courage to make the call. My hand hovered over the phone like it might burn me. The name Elliott Morehouse, attorney at law, blinked back from my screen. I wasn't afraid of Cassian anymore. I was afraid of what it meant to speak the truth out loud. Reporting your own son felt like cutting through the last thread connecting you to your old self. But I called anyway. His assistant booked me for Friday morning. When I arrived, rain drizzled over Bay Street. The law office was tucked between a coffee shop and an antique store, the windows fogged with condensation. Inside smelled of paper and time-old contracts, ink and coffee brewed too long. Elliott Morehouse stood when I entered. He was in his 60s with kind eyes but a posture that said he'd seen every kind of deceit there was. "Mrs. Marin," he greeted me, shaking my hand. "Let's start from the beginning." I told him everything. The withdrawals, the forged signature, the electric bill in my name, even the text messages that dripped with condescension. At one point, I stopped talking because my throat burned. "You're describing financial exploitation of an elder," he said plainly. "You're not overreacting. You're being victimized." The word victim hit me like a slap. "I don't want my son in jail," I said quickly. "I just want to be safe. I just want peace." He nodded. "Peace isn't possible without accountability. If you don't act now, he can legally assume control of everything you own. Once that happens, you can't reverse it. Not even the courts will help." He opened a folder and pushed a form toward me. "We start by filing a fraud claim. It doesn't send anyone to prison, it simply protects you." My fingers trembled as I signed. The pen felt heavier than any tool I'd held in my life. I realized I wasn't just signing a form. I was reclaiming authority over my own name. Elliot watched me carefully, then said, "You've been holding this together alone for too long. You don't have to anymore." He printed another document and circled a section with his pen. "There's a loan here," he said. $8,000 opened under your Social Security number through Atlantic Credit Bureau. It's listed as home renovation expenses. And does that sound familiar? My stomach turned. "That's Cassian's house," I whispered. Elliot nodded slowly. "Then this is serious. Whoever did this had full access to your identity. If they move you to a care home, they'll gain legal guardianship, full control. You'll lose everything, including your say in your own life." The rain outside grew louder, tapping against the window like impatient fingers. I looked out at the gray blur of the street and thought of Cassian's voice calling me forgetful, fragile old. I turned back to Elliot. "What do I do now? You replace every card, every password, every account, and you document everything." By the time I left, the clouds had broken open, rain pouring steady and cold. I stood under the awning, clutching the folder he'd given me. For the first time in months, I felt something close to relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. I walked down to the pier before heading home. The ocean looked heavy and infinite, but it didn't scare me the way it used to. It felt honest, wild, and untamable like truth itself. I took a deep breath of salt air and whispered, "No more silence." When I returned home, a new email waited on my laptop. Authorization reminder. Please sign. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I hit delete, emptied the trash, and wrote a title in my journal. Phase 2, Retake Control. By November, Cassian's war had gone public. I hadn't spoken to him in 2 weeks when my neighbor Bernice showed up at my door holding her iPad. "You might want to see this," she said. On the screen was Cassian's Facebook post, a smiling photo of him and Rowena in front of their house, captioned, "Taking care of family isn't always easy, especially when they turn against you, but we do what's right." The comments were full of sympathy. "You're such a good son. Your mom's lucky to have you. Elder care is so hard these days." Each word carved another cut across my patience. He'd painted himself the hero and me the villain. I didn't comment. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I clicked Save Post and printed it. Evidence. Proof of narrative manipulation. At Atlantic Credit Bureau, a woman named Lydia confirmed the fraud report I'd filed. "You were right to come in," she said, flipping through pages. "The accounts tied to your name are extensive. We'll start the reversal process, but you should expect legal proceedings." Her words didn't scare me anymore. They grounded me. On the way home, I stopped by Piedmont Electric to finalize the name correction. The clerk there recognized me. "You're the lady whose son was using her account, right?" she said, half whispering. I smiled politely and replied, "Was, past tense." That night, I logged onto Cassian's LinkedIn. His newest post glared back proud to support aging parents through difficult times. Managing their finances is a privilege, not a burden. I laughed under my breath. The same man who stole my money was branding himself as a model of filial devotion. I printed that one too. Then I called Bernice. She came over in her slippers, holding a mug of tea. "I need you to witness something," I said. I showed her the posts, the transactions, the printed credit report. She looked at each page carefully. "You're not losing your mind, Patricia. You're documenting it. We signed her statement together. It was the first time in years someone had physically stood beside me for something that mattered. Days passed. Cassian's tone shifted from smug to defensive. He called one night. "Mom, stop embarrassing yourself. People are talking. I've had coworkers reach out." "Then let them," I said evenly. "They deserve the whole story. Are you threatening me? No. I'm clarifying you." He hung up. Minutes later, he posted another picture of him as a child in my arms captioned, "Sometimes love hurts the most when it comes from family." It went viral in his little circle. Sympathy poured in again. I printed it, labeled it "Digital Manipulation," and slid it into my binder. The Atlantic Credit Bureau's final report arrived 2 weeks later. Total fraudulent activity, $17,000. Enough to establish a criminal case. Elliot called that afternoon. "We have everything we need. Once you're ready, we'll file in Jefferson County." I didn't answer right away. I looked at the sun setting through the kitchen window, the light fading across the oak table, the one thing I'd refused to sell. "I'm ready," I finally said, but not for revenge, for clarity. That night, I wrote a letter titled Letter of Record. I described everything from the first unauthorized withdrawal to the last lie. I attached copies of every document and sent it sealed to Elliot's office. I made 2 more copies, one in my safe, one hidden behind the old family photo on the wall. If anything happened to me, the truth would speak for itself. Around 7 p.m., I saw Cassian's newest post, him and Rowena smiling at a charity gala. Caption: "No matter what rumors spread, kindness wins." I almost pitied him. He was performing for strangers desperate to control a story that no longer belonged to him. As I prepared tea, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. The porch light flickered. Through the curtain, I saw their silhouettes, Cassian and Rowena, standing at the gate. His face was cold, his hand clutching a thick envelope. My heart didn't race this time. I placed my cup down carefully and whispered, "If tonight is your show, tomorrow belongs to the law." The doorbell rang sharp and insistent. I walked to the door folder in hand, the same calm I used to bake birthday cakes and balance bills. When I turned the knob, I wasn't the mother he thought he could manipulate anymore. I was the witness. The door creaked open and the lights inside flickered once steady, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Winter light washed the small courtroom the color of ice. Benches creaked. A recorder clicked on and I felt my own breath steady against the cool air. Elliot sat beside me, one hand resting on the folder I had named Proof Case. Across the aisle, Cassian adjusted his tie. Rowena's nails pressed into her clutch. Their lawyer looked fresh out of law school and very sure of himself. "Mrs. Marin, do you understand the allegations against your son?" the judge asked. "I do," I said, voice even, "and I have evidence." Cassian's attorney rose. "Your Honor, this is a family matter. My client and his wife stepped in because his mother has shown increasing confusion. Any transfers or accounts were for her protection." Elliot stood without hurry. "We submit a medical evaluation from Dr. Shu affirming full capacity. We also submit time-stamped statements and location records." He handed up the packet. On top was the letterhead from the clinic in Port Townsend, the date that matched the Seattle withdrawal. The judge read, brow low. Cassian leaned forward, voice warm enough to pass for compassion. "Mom, remember you told me to take out cash that day. You forgot." "I remember the nurse's earrings, the smell of antiseptic, and I remember not being in Seattle," I said. Rowena lifted her chin. "Patricia once allowed her ex-husband to open accounts. Perhaps she's mixing things up." Elliot slid in another exhibit. Signature analysis. Mrs. Marin's P has a left dip. The loan signature curves right. Additionally, a certified recording from Piedmont Electric customer service. The courtroom screen flickered. We heard a man's voice giving my full name and social security number, then saying, "Yes, I opened the account." The clerk hit pause. The judge looked at Cassian. Color drained from my son's face. "Rowena handled utilities," he said weakly. She signed because Mom said it was okay." Rowena's breath hitched. He told me his mother had agreed. He said once he had guardianship, he'd sell her house and put the money into a portfolio. I believed him. Her eyes glossed. She looked away from me. Something inside me went quiet and very clear. I thought of the afternoons I'd taught Cassian to count change at the kitchen table, pennies, lined like planets. I turned to him. I taught you to count yes. Today you count consequences. His lawyer asked for a recess to discuss settlement. The judge shook his head. Not necessary. The record is sufficient. The judge read the ruling identity fraud and elder financial exploitation established by preponderance of evidence. Restitution of $26,000, including fees and penalties. Formal public apology to be posted on the platforms used to defame. 6-month no-contact order, except through counsel. Each word landed like a gavel of its own, not loud final. Cassian stared at the table, jaw working. "You'll destroy me," he whispered. "No," I said, standing. "You started that when you turned your mother into a resource." The white light in the room felt almost surgical, leaving nowhere for stories to hide. Elliot leaned close. "You did exactly what you came to do." He closed the proof case with a soft click. In the hallway, the recorder beeped off. "Case closed," someone said behind the door. Rowena passed me without meeting my eyes. Cassian didn't look up. I walked toward the winter sun spilling through the glass and told myself not for comfort, but for truth. I may have lost a son today. I saved the woman he took for granted. 2 months later, the house was reduced to boxes and echoes. Afternoon light laid long gold rectangles across the scuffed floorboards. Bernice stood by the door in her wool coat, arms folded like a mother hen. "You sure about this, Isolde? I'm not leaving a place," I said, taping the last box shut. "I'm leaving a roll." I locked the door, slid the key into an envelope for the realtor, and walked out with one suitcase, one folder, and a photograph of a little boy asleep on my shoulder. The highway unspooled south along the coast. Washington ceded to Oregon, then to California. The ocean kept pace in the corner of my eye, gray, then blue, then silver as clouds broke. I stopped in small towns for coffee and silence, learning the weight of a life that finally fit in the back seat. In Monterey Bay, I founded a small cottage with a weathered porch and a view that made my chest loosen. The owner handed me the keys with a smile, as if she knew what kind of ending I was writing. That night, waves stitched themselves to the shore, and sleep would not take me. In the half-dark, I heard the thud of a soccer ball, a boy's laugh, a ghost from a room that no longer existed. I made tea and opened the proof case one last time, not to count, but to bless what the counting had given back. Morning brought an email from Cassian. He said he was getting help, that he was sorry, that he wanted a chance to make it right. I read it twice. Then I opened a new page in my notebook titled, "The Week I Sold My House," and wrote, "I hope you find peace. I cannot be the proof of it." I folded the paper and didn't send it, not out of spite, but because some doors must remain closed to keep a home warm. Back in Port Townsend, while cleaning the last drawer, I'd found a letter I hadn't known I'd kept my ex-husband's handwriting small and precise. If you're reading this, it said, "You're still believing other people more than you believe yourself." I slipped that letter into my journal as a relic of a language I no longer spoke. I kept none of Cassian's gifts, none of the furniture he loved to lounge on, nothing that pretended comfort while taxing my spirit. The cottage asked for very little: a kettle, a chair, a lamp. I bought daisies from a roadside stand and put them in a chipped jar. The room softened. By afternoon, I walked the beach, the wind pushing salt into my throat until it tasted like medicine. I thought of the courtroom's white light and this blue light, how both were honest in their own ways. Justice had not mended the torn place in me, but it had stopped the tearing. I could do the mending myself. On the second evening, I sealed a thick envelope labeled Letter of Record and mailed it to Elliot for safekeeping. Another copy went behind a framed photo on the cottage wall. If anyone ever questioned my voice again, the paper would speak. Days settled into a rhythm. Coffee on the porch, a book at midday, long walks until the horizon felt like a friend. Sometimes sorrow visited, but it didn't unpack. Sometimes I pictured Cassian as a boy, shoes to new eyes bright with a future I tried to buy for him. I let the picture fade without apology. Bernice called to check in. "It's quiet here without your porch light," she said. "Quiet can be a blessing," I answered. We promised to write real letters, the kind that rustle. On the last page of my week's journal, I wrote what I meant to live. There isn't a court in the world that can repay what was lost, but a truthful record returns a person to herself. Forgiveness does not require return. Love is not proven by endurance. It is expressed by boundaries and respect. At dawn on the 7th day, I closed the notebook and carried my chair onto the porch. The ocean breathed. The sky lifted. I rested my palms on the warm wood of the armrests and said to the air, and to whatever listened, I used to be a victim. Now I am the witness of my own life. The waves kept their steady time, and for once I didn't need to.